I actually failed the TCAP and they tried to hold me back a year. Um, and I just could not read at all, basically, and tried to avoid it at any chance I could. But I was yes, so that was one major obstacle. Meant that I was in like special education classes, just not on track towards college in that way. And then another, I'd say a huge obstacle of mine, was my family situation. And I dealt with a lot of child abuse and sexual violence as a child. That's another big part of what made me who I am.
Hey everybody, I'm back with another episode of Soul with Success Stories. And today I am talking to a newer friend of mine. And I'm honored to be able to call her a friend. I guess I use that a little loosely, but she is someone that I have admired from afar, and I've had the opportunity to share a few different platforms with her and get a couple of awards with her too. This is Mahal Burr. And Mahal is the director of the Youth Action Center for Bridges. And Bridges is an amazing organization here. And Mahal is an amazing individual leading youth, and it's so appropriate that she is. So I can't wait to get into the interview. But before I do, Mahal, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Definitely. And one thing I will say, I have also admired you for a very long time. And yeah, so I'm really excited to be here. So a little bit about me. I am from Memphis, been here since I was 1. And I love Memphis, it's my home. I went to Snowden for 9 years, from kindergarten through 9th. I then went to Ridgeway for 2 years, and I ended at Lausanne. After Lausanne, I went to Carleton College in Minnesota.
So you went to Lausanne. I didn't realize you went to Lausanne. And then what brought you back to Memphis?
Yeah, so first of all, I went to college in Minnesota, which was cold.
That's what brought you back to Memphis.
Well, every summer I came back, and I actually graduated early because I got a community organizing job here with Stand for Children. And so I graduated early to come back and do that work. And then from there, I did go into teaching for 2 years. And then from there, I got this incredible job with Bridges, supporting youth organizers, supporting youth who are directly impacted by different injustices and supporting them to create change on those issues.
Well, that's awesome. So how long have you been with Bridges?
Almost 10 years.
But I thought it's been a while now. Well,
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm ready to get into your story a little bit more. In this program, I have what I call the Soul Success System. It's my belief that anyone who can learn how to overcome their obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices can have what I call soul with success. And that is success no matter what you go through in life. And Mahal, I've heard a little bit about your story. I know a little bit about your journey, and you are a soul with success woman, and you understand what it means to be successful in spite of challenges. So start by telling us a little bit about some of the obstacles that you've overcome and just how you've done it.
In my life, I guess the first one that came to mind when you said that was when I was, so I have something called dyslexia. And for those who don't know what dyslexia is, are you familiar with dyslexia?
Yeah,
you are? Okay.
Yeah. Explain a little bit more, because I definitely can learn more.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people think of it as just like struggling with reading, but that is part of it. And what it really means is that your brain thinks of things in terms of like more creative than most folks. So a lot of people use about 80 to 90% logic at a given moment, and then like 10 to 20% creative. But dyslexics, there's a spectrum, very simplified, but like 50-50. So that means that if I look at a word, I can like also think of all the creative ways it could be any other word. Or like if I look at a P, it could be a princess with hair going down her back, or a chair, or a B or a Q, or all those things. But it made reading very difficult for me. I actually failed the TCAP and they tried to hold me back a year. Um, and I just could not read at all, basically. And tried to avoid it at any chance I could. But I was yes, so that was one major obstacle. Meant that I was in like special education classes, just not on track towards college in that way. And then another, I'd say a huge obstacle of mine was my family situation. And I dealt with a lot of child abuse and sexual violence as a child. That's another big part of what made me who I am.
Yeah, that's a lot. Talk a little bit about how but unfortunately, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Talk about a little bit about how you dealt with it and how you overcame it, or both actually, because dyslexia is not uncommon either. So talk a little bit about how you overcame both of those obstacles.
Yeah. Well, so how did I overcome them? So I would say with dyslexia, um, I was extremely lucky to have a mom who like helped me reframe dyslexia, not as like a disability, but as like something that could be a strength. And we actually had Dyslex Sundays and would just study a different person who has dyslexia and learn about them. And in learning about them, would also write them a letter to ask them questions. And from doing that, I learned that so many dyslexics see dyslexia as like part of what helped them be successful. The greatest artists, the greatest athletes, the greatest scientists were dyslexic. Some of the greatest authors were dyslexic because they like created things that no one else could think of. And so I think it helped me start reframing things. And also it made me hugely advocate for myself. One of
Cool.
Yeah,
I noticed that before you even explained that, how you immediately talked about the positive, how it turned it into a positive. And I speak about reframing a lot of different situations, but I personally love how you did that. And kudos to mom for showing you that. That's amazing. And I can guarantee somebody watching this is like, that's a great idea. I'm gonna
My mom was incredible at like supporting me to like love myself. I actually wrote a little children's book about it that I wrote it for my goddaughter who's also dyslexic, but it's about how to like understand what it means and see it as a strength and use it as a strength. So I completely agree with the reframing. Like
that's powerful. So is the book available, or did you just write it for her?
No, it is a bit. I put it as a PDF online so that anyone could use it. And we made copies for everyone in her school. So she goes to a dyslexic school.
Okay.
But it's
to make it available for people who are watching this. So
yeah, of course.
let's talk a little bit about how you overcame the other major obstacle in your life.
Yeah. So I would say like one is I think like childhood trauma, especially like sexual violence and domestic violence, is one thing that like it's like something you're constantly healing from. And I think you spend your whole life healing. But I will say, I think a huge part for me in overcoming it, that was the question, right? Was well, okay. And that's hard. Was no, go for it. Sorry.
I was gonna say, and I kind of feel what you're saying too, is that and maybe it's like not overcoming it, but the process of dealing with it and able to at least move forward and be positive and not let it stifle you, even if it's not something that's fully overcome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, I can definitely get into that. Thank you for the reframing. I would say when I was, um, I think a huge part for me was, I think there's like a stage of surviving and a stage of like get to a space where you're like thriving, right? And for me, surviving looked like taking back my power. And I did that through the same thing that I now work with young people on doing, which is like learning how to advocate, organize, fight for what you believe, and fight for your rights and build your own power. And I think so. I got deeply involved, and actually, that's how I first came across you. Deeply involved in um, helping figuring out how do we challenge um, sexual violence, child abuse in our society, and like what is the root cause? Because I was like, my own situation. I was able to. I when I was 14, I came forward about what was happening to me. Like really, really, when I say came forward, I mean I told one person and I didn't want them to tell anybody. And then, DCS got involved and came to my school and that all happened. But and that was like very scared. I felt absolutely out of control, 100%. But as I like started to heal through that process, I realized, wait a second, like this is not only an issue for me, like you said, it's common. Um, and we got to figure out what the root cause is and solve it. And that became like my passion. And I would say more than trying to heal myself, that's not where I started, not with like processing what had happened or like, ever since I was like 3 years old, what had been happening to me. It really, the first step for me was learning about it, learning and like it's easier to advocate sometimes for others than for yourself. And so that was where I started. And that was like, sometimes decentering, but at all times I started to feel powerful in a way that I had not felt during any of that time.
Wow. Um, that's major, and I know I do from my own experience, understand that it's a process and probably, in a lot of ways you're never fully healed and never fully overcome. But I also can resonate with the fact that you said helping other people and empowering other people um is part of what helps to heal. It helps you to move forward, to know that you are making a positive impact in some other way, even if it's not dealing with your own situation as directly. So I get it, and I salute you for even being able to talk about it, and for doing the work that you are doing and helping other people. Well, let's go to the second part of Solar Success System, which is eliminating excuses. And so we all have obstacles. You share some big ones, but we all can make excuses from those obstacles and not move forward. Talk about your life and some of the excuses that maybe you did make, or some of the ones that you said, I got to eliminate these excuses because I'm moving forward.
Yeah. You know, when I was doing that, like, and still am doing advocacy and organizing and building power and supporting others, I was like, oh, but like, I don't need to focus on my own stuff. And I actually think that was one of my, um, that was part of, for me to move from what I call like surviving to like truly healing and like thriving, because I built this power, but then I needed to apply it to myself. Um, I had this idea that, oh, the work is like helping others is too important to helping myself. And that caused problems. And that led to me showing up not healthy and centered or getting triggered and like just like trying to push through in a way that I really needed to process my own stuff. Um, I don't know. Someone, and I really need to go to therapy. I had this major excuse of like, oh, I'm too busy for therapy and that works for other people. And I would suggest it for everyone else.
I get it. I get it.
Um, and also like mindfulness, because I don't think therapy is the only way like there's mindfulness, there's like creating healing spaces for yourself. Like, I think I was at a state for a really long time where I was very afraid to be alone with myself because I didn't want to start processing any of that stuff. And that really affected also like romantic relationships. It was because when you got all that stuff and how you grew up seeing relationships and also especially romantic relationships, and then you have the sexual trauma as well. It makes
That's a lot. I'm glad
being in relationships very difficult.
I can definitely, again, I can relate in a whole lot of ways and with a whole lot of what you just said, including, telling other people to go to counseling. It's like, yeah, that's what you need to do, but not actually doing it yourself. And I mean, I'm glad you even said that because that's what I always like for people to do when we do these interviews is let's just be honest because sometimes we can give other people advice that we know we need to take and we don't even take it ourselves, right? And so I appreciate your honesty with all of that, and I completely understand. But we all can make excuses, and sometimes we do make excuses. But I'm super proud of you again for sharing that because this is not easy, and I just know how beneficial this is going to be for other people. The third part of the soul success system is calculated choices. And so you've made some choices along the way, even going back to sharing with that one person, right? And then, calculated choices throughout your career. Talk about choices you made along your journey.
Yeah. So I have like I made a calculated choice to get into therapy and get into like mindfulness and healing. And my therapy is nature. I became really into creating spaces where I'm alone and able to heal with waterfalls and sunrises and sunsets.
You know what?
Um,
Let me say this real quick is that I see your posts all the time and I see that, but I didn't know that that was a thought behind it. That makes it even more special, more beautiful. I'm going to really treasure those posts now. Okay.
yeah, I started doing it after going through some activism and getting arrested as part of an activism work. And afterwards, I was like, dang, I really need to heal through some stuff or I am not going to be okay. And then in that process of doing that, that's when I realized, wow, this is truly what will make me be able to be my best self as I show up in this work.
I love it. Yeah, your posts are beautiful and the places that you go and the things that you share. And I don't know if you do this or not, but that's healing and therapeutic for the people watching it too.
Yeah.
Including me. So when I see it, because I like to travel and experience places as well. So when I see it, it excites me for one. It's like, where is she? I want to go there. It is a calming thing that just watching it. Okay, well, you can't throw out activism and being arrested and not talk about that a little bit more.
You hear me? Just make sure. I was gonna say I'm really glad to hear that. That makes me happy. And I did make a website, covidescapes901.com, which has all of the places I've been, the distance from Memphis, and then my tips and suggestions on where to go. It has a map of all of them too.
Oh, that's awesome. Definitely gonna have to check that out. Yeah. I was saying you can't say activism and being arrested and not talk about what that was. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think part of so I was arrested around the Black Lives Matter movement here in Memphis when the National Guard came in, and I forget what year that was, but and I was being a part of the support team to support people being able to name what was happening was wrong and the peaceful protest that was happening in Memphis. And I was arrested with my students who were also protesting at that. And I would, and I got they got arrested and I got arrested with them kind of thing. And it was very hard. And I would say I think a lot of people try to romanticize like the protests and the arrests, and it's extremely traumatic. It brings up a lot of stuff. But and in some ways, I think it was kind of what propelled me into like, hold on, like activism, organizing, standing up for what you believe is really important, and you got to do some personal healing work so that you can actually be sustainable in this work. And that kind of, to your question that you asked about a really explicit decision that I made, I often say this to the young people I work with, is like working with trauma and healing is kind of like being on a sailboat. And in the sailboat, it has like cracks in it, and you definitely have to spend some time like healing those cracks and pasting them up. And there's also water in it, and you gotta spend some time getting the water out. But if you spend too much time on doing this, you might lose track of where you're going with the boat. So you gotta get your head up and like look where you're going. And you also have to rest, and you also have to, like make sure that the things are pointed in the right direction. And I think my like intentional choice right now is, okay, I'm gonna have my time in nature, and that's like my like rest and healing, and I'm gonna take time to like kind of put that aside and the trauma work and thinking about that, and focus on where I want to go so I don't lose track of that as I'm moving forward. Yeah.
It's beautiful and it's powerful. You have such a calming voice anyway, so that's very helpful and beneficial to your students when you're talking about dealing with trauma and overcoming obstacles. Yeah, it's really calming. Makes me feel, and as you describe nature, and I'm picturing some of your posts, it makes me feel like I'm in nature, and I have to go on these trips with you. I'll reach out to you about that. I'm definitely gonna check.
Love that.
I'm definitely gonna check out that list. Well, Mahal, you definitely have described that you are a solo woman. You know how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices. And you've achieved solo success because you are a success in so many ways, and you're helping other young people to be successful. But what is your personal definition of success?
Yeah, so I think I actually do an exercise with the youth where we do this and try to define our personal definition of success, which I think one is not whatever society's telling you. It's like comes from a space of deeply reflecting over where are you happiest and feel most healthiest and curious and calm and playful. So my spaces, so for me, success looks like living a life that I am truly proud of, and that I can, and there's space for me to be healing, because I believe heal people heal people. And that's who I want to make myself proud. So I want to be someone who's creating healing in the communities and in the connections that I have. Yeah, I want a life that I look back at and I'm like, I am proud of this life that I've lived.
That's beautiful. One last question. What piece of advice would you give? Now, you've given a lot of great advice. What's one piece of advice you would give someone who's watching this, who maybe has dealt with some of the same challenges you've dealt with? What would you give them to help them to be successful in spite of those challenges?
Oh, there's so many thoughts that are coming to mind. The one that automatically came to mind is probably my hardest lesson to learn was like that I'm not broken. And that I think that reframing that you named earlier, like I'm not broken, I am healing. And I and I hate when people say like stuff happens to you for a reason because you don't want to say that to me. But I do believe that like you are more powerful than you know, and whatever happened to you, you can reframe and like for yourself, like to be something that can make you more fun. And I think storytelling is powerful, like figuring out how you want to frame your story to others and to yourself and own it is has been a very healing process for me.
I think that's powerful, and you nailed that one for me, because writing my book and sharing my story was me doing exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Me doing exactly what you just said. So, Mahal, you are a beautiful woman, and you are so strong. And I don't know, I just feel peace all over you and through you and from you, and I know that's what you bring to this community. In so many unique ways, and such a powerful woman. So I thank you so much for your time. I'm thankful for the connections that we've had. I'm thankful for all the times we've run into each other.
And can I just end by sharing, I have, like, when I first started working on child abuse, I worked with young moms, and the young moms that I worked with had all read your book. And when I asked them the question of like, who inspires you most, they all named you. So I just wanted to end on that note and let you know that, like, I think this is a beautiful thing that you're doing here. And I am really, really glad to be in space with you always.
That means, yeah. I remember when you first told me that, and when you were being honored at an awards program, and you shared that with me. And I think about that often, and that just also helps people too. And that's why I'm glad this interview is being done too, because you never know when you're reaching people and when your story makes it to someone and affects their lives. And sometimes you'll never know. And so I'm glad you helped me to know that. And that does a lot for me, because as you already said, healing is a constant journey. And so knowing that you are impacting other people, that does help you to heal. And so, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much for that. And I can't wait for people to share to watch your story and be blessed by it like I have. And thank you so much, Mahal.
Yeah, thank you, Summer.
If you're new to my channel, welcome. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiration and tips to become a more resilient and confident leader of others, or even just your own life.